Often the hardest part of my day, shutting off that beautiful music so we can learn together. How are you, my holy sisters and brothers? Let's light up the darkness. Got some beautiful, beautiful stuff for you today. That was Yehuda Green singing Nishmas Kol Chai, which was an amazing coincidence because we'll be studying that very prayer on today's daf. It's just the next song that came up as we're working our way through his album, Land of Your Soul, during the warm-up music. But it's in today's daf, those very words, Nishmas Kol Chai, and we'll be getting to that in a little while. Who is with us today on a Thursday night? Please remember, no class tomorrow, Friday. No class on Saturday night. With God's help, we'll be back together again on Sunday. Our minyan is having a Shabbaton outside of LA. All right. Sharon in Lebanon, New Jersey. Sammy in Dallas. Annie in Michigan. Lindsay in Cincinnati. Jose in Miami Lakes. Julie in Santa Clara, Utah. Paula in Chicago. Stephen in New Hampshire. Tom in PA. Christo in Lubbock. Lucy in Minnesota. Paul in the Great Northwest. Hannah in New York. Melissa in Great Neck. Nancy, North Carolina. Heather in Kansas. Renee in Indiana. Patrice in Utah, right? Saying shalom. Paula loves the music. Tom says no accidents. Chaim says good evening. Judy from Grants Pass, Oregon. Over there on the YouTube side, Faith in Oregon and Kevin Valentine. Welcome, everybody. I got to actually drive out of town tonight, so let's just get moving, shall we? Where are we holding? This is Tractate Tinus, the laws of public fast, often related to drought, and therefore so kind of a scriptural understanding of the meaning and timing of rain in the Holy Land. We're holding Daf Vav, page 6. We're in chapter 1, continuing our discussion of the second Mishnah in chapter 1. There are 4 chapters in Masechet Tinus, this tractate, the 10th volume of the Talmud. We pick it up right near the top of page 6 on the A side. Yesterday we were discussing interpretations of various verses from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible, as Rabbi Yitzhak was teaching his student Rav Nachman, bringing down teachings from Rabbi Yochanan. Now the Gemara returns to the topic of rain. The sages taught in a Baraisa, the first rain, Yoreh, is called by this name due to the fact that it instructs Moreh. So the early rain is called Yoreh. A teacher is a Moreh, and it's a similar root. So the first rain is called by this name due to the fact that it instructs people to plaster their roofs and to bring in their produce from the fields to their houses and to attend to all their needs in the field before more rain falls. Right? So in the Holy Land, almost no rain to speak of all summer. When the first rain, the early rains finally come, hello, patch up your roof. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, that you're prepared for the heavy rains which are coming. We've mentioned the last 2 days the second paragraph of the Shema, which mentions the early rains and the late rains. So let's just take a look at that passage. Where am I? Okay, so in the Shema, we say it morning and evening. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. The first paragraph, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul, etc. the second paragraph. And it will be, if you will diligently obey my commandments, which I enjoin upon you this day, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. I will give rain for your land at the proper time, Yore o Malkush, right? The early rain and the late rain, Yore u Malkush, right? So these are two, excuse me, these are two different names for rain. The early rain, Yoreh, and the late rain, Malkush, meaning at the beginning of the rainy season in the land of Israel and at the end of the rainy season. The beginning of the rainy season, around now. The late rain at the end of the rainy season in the spring, as Passover is approaching. Okay. And so now we're getting some sort of homiletical teachings about the early rain and the late rain based on the Hebrew word for early rain and late rain. So one idea related to the word for teachers. It teaches you, get busy sealing up your houses. Here comes the rain. Alternatively, Yoreh is referring to the fact that it moistens, marv, the earth and waters it to the depths, as it is stated, watering, raveh, its ridges abundantly, settling down its furrows. You make it soft with showers. You bless its growth. That's Psalm 65, verse 11. Alternatively, Yoreh means that it falls gently and it does not fall vehemently. Or perhaps that is not the case. Is that nice? The Gemara says, or perhaps that is not the case. Rather, Yoreh means that the rain causes the fruit to drop from the trees, washes the seeds away, and washes the trees away in a destructive manner. We've all seen, terrible images on the news when an area of the country or of the world gets flooded with torrential rains. It's obviously not such a blessing then. It's overdone, as it were. According to this interpretation, Yoreh is related to Yeriyah, shooting. Therefore, the verse states, Deuteronomy 11:4, last rain, Malkosh, that's the late rains. And just as Malkosh refers specifically to rains that are for a blessing, so too, Yoreh is referring to rains that are for a blessing. Or perhaps that is not the case, says the Gemara, and rather Malkosh means that the rain falls so hard, kashe, and vehemently that it knocks down the houses, shatters the trees, and brings up the locusts. Therefore, the verse states, Yoreh, from which it may be inferred that just as Yoreh is for a blessing, so too Malkosh is for a blessing. The context tells us that if we heed God's command and we love him with all our heart and soul, then he will send the rain in its proper time, Yoreh u'malkush, the early rain, the late rain. Obviously, it indicates that it's for a blessing because we're doing our part and God is going to reward us for it. But if we don't do our part, perhaps he will also punish us with the very same rains by sending too much, or, as it says later in the paragraph, by restraining the heavens so that there will be no rain. And the whole idea of these public fasts is that very often they were decreed because of a drought. We're getting to that. And with regard to Yoreh itself, from where do we derive that it is referring to rain that falls for a blessing? As it is written, this is Joel 2:23, you, children of Zion, be glad and rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the first rain, Moreh, in his kindness, and he caused to come down for you the rain, the first rain, Moreh, and the last rain, Malkosh, in the first month. That's in the book of Joel. And this verse clearly states that Yoreh, also referred to as Moreh, the first rains fall due to God's kindness for a blessing. How could Yoreh and Moreh be the same thing? Hebrew's very moody language, and very often the constructions, it's really based on the root. The root is the same, and that's how you know that the words are related. And then as other letters get added, often it's really to add a suffix, prefix, preposition. You add one letter and you can get in the or to the, these kinds of constructed meanings in the Hebrew language. But the root is what carries the meaning. The Gemara, so I'm going to skip a couple of paragraphs. It was taught in another Baraisa The first rain is in Mar Cheshvan, and the last rain is in Nisan. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir. And the rabbis say the time of the first rain is in Kislev, right? So there was Tishrei, which contained Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. Then came Cheshvan, sometimes called Mar Cheshvan, because often not so good stuff happens there. And then the next month is Kislev, the month that we're in right now, the month that contains Hanukkah, and so it's called the month of miracles. And so the first rain is in Mar Cheshvan. This is the statement of Rabbi Meir, and the rabbis say the time of the first rain is in Kislev. And the Gemara asks, who are the rabbis cited here? And Rav Chisda said it is the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, as it is taught in a Baraisa. When is the first rainfall? Each opinion cited in the Baraisa provides a range of dates for when this rainfall is expected. Why are the rabbis going to spend so much time talking about when is the rainfall expected? Because if it doesn't come when it's expected, you start to think we may need to decree some public fasts because a drought is coming, and let's get ahead of it by having the people examine their deeds and pray that the drought won't be severe. You don't do that, when it's in the rainy season and there's still time for the rain to come in its proper time. But once you see that the rain is late, then you can start to think about public fast. And that's why it's important to understand when is the rain thought of as late. Okay, so when is the first? So the earliest date, according to this Baraisa, on which the first rainfall might occur in the land of Israel, is on the 3rd of Mar Cheshvan. The intermediate time is on the 7th of the month, and the latest for the first rain is on the 17th of the month. And this is the statement of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says the earliest that it might fall is on the 7th of Mar Cheshvan, and the intermediate date is on the 17th, and the line is on the 23rd. So you can see already that the rain comes down quite reliably in general terms, in Mar Cheshvan. So, October, November. What's interesting about it, though, is the rain, you would think rainy seasons are much more tied to the solar calendar. Here we're talking about dates in the lunar calendar. I mean, Mar Cheshvan could be in October, could be in November. And here they're giving specific dates when the rain is coming. And it makes sense in this context because, when we're talking about the Jews living in the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of Judea, with the temple standing, it's at a much higher spiritual level, and God is much more involved in the affairs of the land. And so you can sort of count on God to send the rain in its proper time if we're behaving properly. But if we're not behaving properly, then God may withhold the rain. And Rabbi Yosef says the earliest time for the first rain is on the 17th of Mar Cheshvan. The intermediate date is on the 23rd. And the latest is on the new moon of Kislev, Rosh Chodesh Kislev, the beginning of the month of Kislev. And so too, Rabbi Yosef would say the learned individuals who would start to fast for rain at an earlier time than the rest of the community do not start to fast due to a drought until the new moon of Kislev. Until this date arrives, it is not considered a drought, as the first rainfall could still fall in its proper time. And Rav Chisda said, the halacha, the law, is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. Amaymar, the sage Amaymar, would teach this ruling of Rav Chisda in the following language. On the 3rd of Mar Cheshvan, one starts to request rain. Rabban Gamliel says on the 7th. With regard to this statement, Rav Chisda said, the halacha, the law, is in accordance with the opinion of Rabban Gamliel. And the Gemara asks, in accordance with whose opinion is that which is taught in a Baraisa? Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, with regard to the rains that fell on 7 consecutive days, you count them as 2 separate rainfalls, either as the first and second rainfalls together, or as the second and third rainfalls together. In accordance with whose opinion is this statement? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, as he alone establishes a set interval of 7 days between each of the rainfalls. And Rav Chisda said the law is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. Now, why is it important that they're talking? We understand, okay, well, the earliest that we can start to expect the rains, and if they don't come at that point, we're already starting to worry that they're late. Why does it matter when the second and third rains of the rainy season have come? With regard to the mention of 3 rainfalls in the Baraisa, the Gemara asks, granted, the time of the first rainfall is significant, as it is the date when one begins to request rain in our prayers, in our daily prayers. Likewise, the time of the third rainfall is important, so that one knows when to begin to fast if no rain has fallen by then. However, for what reason is the second rainfall mentioned in the Baraisa? And Rabbi Zera said, the second rainfall is significant for the issue of vows. As we learned in a Mishna, in the case of one who vows to prohibit himself a type of benefit, some kind of benefit, until the rains. I'm going to say, I'm not going to eat potato chips. I will not benefit from potato chips until the rains come. So when can I start eating potato chips? When does that mean, the rains? Does it mean when the first rain comes? Maybe not, because it's plural. I said until the rains come. So maybe the rains haven't come until the second time it rains. Maybe, let's see. So in the case of one who vows to prohibit from himself a type of benefit until the rains, the vow is in effect from when the rains begin to fall until the second rainfall, as this is considered the time of the rains. And Rav Zevid said, the time of the second rainfall is also significant with regard to the law that deals with olives. As we learned in the Mishnah, from when is any person permitted to collect gleanings, forgotten sheaves, and peah, which is produce of the corners of the field? We have a Torah commandment that when we harvest our crop, which in ancient times was done by humans, like moving through the fields and picking the crop, putting it in baskets, and naturally they're not going to get everything. Some stuff they're just going to miss and it's just going to stay on the plants in the field. Some is going to fall out of their baskets. And in any case, you're not allowed to harvest the corners of the field. Why do you not go back and pick up what you missed as you harvested from the plants you didn't pick, the stuff that fell out of your baskets, and the corners? Because that is a form of charity that we leave in the fields for the poor who can come and know that they can eat. Okay, so from when is any person permitted to collect the gleanings, for forgotten sheaves, and peah, which may normally be taken only by the poor? Any individual, any person, any human is permitted to collect them only from when the searchers, who are the last of the poor, arrive and have left the field. From when may anyone collect yield of the vineyard? In the case of the single grapes and small, incompletely formed clusters of grapes, likewise reserved for the poor, from when the poor have left the vineyard and come back after the second time, an indication that they have collected all they wish. So you harvest your field, some of it gets left behind, some on purpose, some by accident, and then that's for the poor, no one can touch it. The poor come, take what they want, and leave. They come again to make sure they got everything they wanted. And after that, okay, the poor got what they're going to take. And if there's anything left in that field, anybody can walk in. It's deemed ownerless, so any person can go in and take. You don't have to be sort of certified poor in order to get it. Incidentally, the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the term for searchers, namoshot? And Rabbi Yochanan said it is referring to elders who walk with a staff, atigra. Since they walk very slowly, they certainly see everything they wish to collect. And Reish Lakish said it is referring to the gleaners who come after all the gleaners, i.e. who arrive after 2 rounds of the poor have passed through the field. So it's almost like you get to see, like you could sort of get it from the people who come when our trash cans are on the street for collection. There's always people who walk up and down the street and look in the recycling bins to pull out, bottles and cans that they can get the recycling fee by taking them to a recycling center. And really, the way it's supposed to work is that the people who are needy, probably the people who are going through the trash cans are needy, and so it's good. They're taking what they should get. But if there was somebody who was going to sort of make a commercial operation out of taking people's recycling in a more organized way as a business, so they should not search the trash cans until the poor have had 2 opportunities to search them. I'm just making that's not a law at all. I'm just saying that's a way to understand this idea that the gleaners come after the poor have had 2 opportunities to take what's left over in the field, and then these more professional gleaners can return. And Rav Papa said that the time of the second rainfall is significant so that one can know until when it is permitted to walk on the permitted paths in fields. One may utilize certain paths on private property, provided that no damage is caused to the farm field. As the master said, anyone may walk on the permitted paths until the second rainfall falls. One who walks on them at a later point in time is likely to trample the plowed field and damage its crops, right? So remember, we might think of the growing season in America as spring to fall, not in Israel, right? In the summer, it's just too hot, too baking hot. So really the growing season is the winter season when the rains are coming and everything's growing in the field. And during that season, you shouldn't take shortcuts through people's fields because the ground is very moist and you might trample the seeds and young shoots in the field. Skip a couple of paragraphs. The Gemara returns to the subject of rain. Rabbi Bahu said, what is the meaning of the term for rainfall reviyah? It is referring to a matter that penetrates, rovia, which causes the earth to bear fruit. And this is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Yehuda. As Rav Yehuda said, beautiful imagery, rain is the husband of the earth. As it is stated, for as the rain comes down and the snow from heaven and returns not there, except it waters the earth and makes it give birth and sprout. And this verse indicates that rain fructifies, beautiful word, fructifies the earth in the manner of a husband and wife. Right? So the rain acts like the husband, the land acts like the wife, and they come together and, they produce the produce of the field, the crops that we all eat. And Rabbi Abahu further said, for rainfall to be considered the first rainfall, it must be sufficient to enter the ground and saturate it to a depth of 1 handbreadth. If it's just a tiny drizzle, that's not the first rains of the rainy season. It's too light. It has to penetrate the earth to at least 1 handbreadth. The second rainfall must be sufficient that the soil is moistened enough to seal the opening of a barrel with its mud. Isn't that great? How much rain has to fall? Enough so that it moistens the earth and we can pick up mud and seal a barrel. Got it. Rav Chisda said, rains which fall and create sufficient mud to seal the opening of a barrel with them means that the year does not constitute a fulfillment of the verse, and he will close up the heavens and there will be no rain. From the second paragraph of the Shema, when we've angered God because we've gone after the gods of others, we've committed idolatry, avodah zarah, God gets very angry, restrains the heavens so there will be no rain, and the land will dry up and we'll be forced out of the land that he gave to us. But if enough rain comes down to make the kind of mud that you could use to seal a barrel, so then it's not going to be that year. We haven't angered God enough that he's restraining the heavens. Already rain has come. Whew! God is not so angry with us. And Rav Chisda said, rain that falls early in the day, prior to the recitation of Shema, the morning Shema, which includes the verse, and he will close up the heavens, is enough to ensure that the hour does not constitute a fulfillment of the verse, and he will close up the heavens, even if no more rain falls at that time. And Abaye said, we said this only if the rain fell during the day, prior to the recitation of, and he will close up the heavens, which we also say during the evening Shema. However, if a small amount of rain falls prior to the recitation of "and he will close up the heavens," which we say during, if a small amount of rain falls before we say that phrase in the morning Shema, this rain could still constitute an expression of "and he will close up." As Rabbi Yehuda Bar Yitzchak said, these morning clouds have no substance. They generally yield minimal or no rain, as it is written, "What can I do for you, Ephraim? What can I do for you, Judah?" The tribes of Ephraim and Judah. "For your goodness is like a morning cloud." And this verse indicates that morning clouds contain little benefit. So it seems that there in that verse, Hosea 6:4, God was actually scolding those tribes. So this idea that, you might think, well, a little bit of, drizzled in the morning, God must be okay with us. We haven't angered God too much. And here come the sages and say, don't be so confident in that. Just a little drizzle in the morning might actually be God reminding you that I could send rain, but I'm not going to because you have committed idolatry or, other sins as not individuals, right, but as a population. Rav Papa said to Abaye, "But people say the well-known maxim, when the gates, i.e. doors, are opened in the morning and there is rain, donkey driver, fold your sack and go to sleep, as it is certain to rain all day, which will render the work of donkey drivers not feasible." And this shows that morning clouds are a sign that it will rain all day. And the Gemara answers, La Kasha, this is not difficult. This statement of Rav Papa is referring to when the sky is overcast with heavy clouds, from which rain will fall all day. Whereas that statement of Rav Chisda is referring to a morning when the sky is overcast with light clouds, which will not bring substantial rain. Think of it this way. They didn't have a weatherman. They didn't have the weather app. They didn't have somebody telling them, here's what all the various instruments have told us is going to happen later today. Not that they're always so accurate, but they didn't have any of that, right? So they were, transmitting knowledge of, okay, look, what are the signs? What time of year is it? What kind of clouds are we seeing? What kind of a pattern have we had? And you can make some guesses about what weather is coming. Skip 3 paragraphs. Rabbi Abahu said, from when, and I am almost done. I got just 2 paragraphs to go, so if you've got questions or comments, please get them in. Rabbi Abahu said, from when does one recite a blessing over rain? From when the groom goes out to meet the bride. That is, when there are puddles of water on the ground such that the water below, represented as the bride in this metaphor, is splashed from above by the raindrops represented as the groom. When you see, that enough rain has come so that there are puddles, and more rain is coming, splashing the puddles, okay, real rain has come, and you can say the blessing over rain. What is the law on this question? From when does one recite a blessing over rain? Where did the law come out? If it rains after a drought that caused hardship. We don't say a blessing every time it rains. But if it rains after a drought that caused hardship, a blessing is recited over the rain. The blessing is recited even if no heavy rainfall occurred, provided that puddles form and drops of water splash up from the puddles, almost as if they are greeting the falling rain. Some commentaries maintain that it is customary not to recite this blessing in places where rain is generally abundant. However, others claim that even in these places, if there is a period of drought followed by rain, the blessing over rain should be recited. Right? So when there's been a drought, and then the rain finally comes, and there's enough rain to form puddles, and then we see more rain falling and splashing the puddles, that's when we recite the blessing. And the Gemara asks, what blessing does one recite in that situation when rain finally comes after a drought? And Rav Yehuda said, Rav said, we thank you, O Lord our God, for each and every drop that you have made fall for us. Pretty nice, pretty simple. We thank you, God, for every drop that you have made fall for us. Now, we don't say a blessing every time it rains, We don't say a blessing every time we receive something good in our lives, like a formal blessing, blessed are you, Lord our God, rule of the universe, etc. But to be thankful for everything that comes our way, that is okay. So this just seems like that's the blessing. I mean, we're just saying thank you. I think we could say thank you anytime we want to thank God. What is this more formal blessing? And Rabbi Yochanan concludes the blessing as follows. If our mouth were as full of song as the sea, and our tongue with singing like the multitude of its waves, etc. Where is that from? That's the Nishmas Kol Chai that I played the song Rabbi Yehuda Green singing at the beginning of the show during the countdown timer. And that's from the Saturday morning, the Shabbos liturgy. And sort of as we get on with the service during the verses of praise before we get to the Shema and the Amidah, we sing Nishmas Kol Chai Tivarech Es Shimcha Hashem Elokeinu V'Ruach Kol Basar. The soul of every living being shall bless your name, Lord our God, and the spirit of all flesh shall continuously glorify and exalt your remembrance, our King. Such beautiful words. We often say them quite quickly on a Saturday morning, worth listening and literally savoring every drop. From the highest world to the lowest, you are Almighty God. And aside from you, we have no King, Redeemer, and Savior who delivers, rescues, sustains, answers, and is merciful in every time of distress and tribulation. We have no king other than you. You are the God of the first and of the last generations, God of all created things, master of all events, who is extolled with manifold praises, who directs his world with kindness and his creatures with compassion. Indeed, the Lord neither slumbers nor sleeps. It is he who rouses those who sleep, who awaken those who slumber, who enables the mute to speak, who releases the bound, who supports those who fall, and who makes erect those who are bowed. To you alone we give thanks. Why am I reading this passage? Here are the next words. Even if our mouth were filled with song as the sea is filled with water, our tongue with melody as the roar of its waves, and our lips with praise as the breadth of the firmament, the rakia, the upper sky. And even if our eyes were radiant like the sun and the moon, and our hands were spread out as the wings of the eagles of the sky, and our feet as swift as deer, we would still be unable to thank you, Lord our God and God of our fathers, and bless your name for even one of the innumerable myriads of favors, miracles, and wonders which you have performed for us and for our fathers before us. And then it continues, right? And it's such a beautiful way of expressing, we thank you and we thank you with all our heart. But we don't even possess the mental, spiritual, physical ability to thank you properly. And even if somehow we were incredibly articulate and incredibly long-winded and incredibly visionary and able to perceive everything that we should thank you for and able to sing it in a beautiful way and had all these other abilities, still we would not even begin to thank you properly for all the myriad blessings that you rain upon us. And that is the prayer of thanks and blessing that one should utter when a rain comes after a drought. And one continues with the formula of the Nishmat prayer recited on Shabbos morning until, may your mercy not forsake us, O Lord our God, and you have not forsaken us. Blessed are you, O Lord, to whom abundant thanksgivings are offered. A lovely passage to read with Thanksgiving approaching next week. All right, let's go to questions and comments here on Tainus Daf Vav, Tainus page 6. Christo. Ooh, there's a lot of questions. Christo, I originally thought all 3 paragraphs of the Shema were in the mezuzah scroll, the mezuzah that we attach to our door frames. Almost 10 years ago now, when I learned otherwise, that it was only the first and second paragraphs, and it made sense why, honestly. There you go. And, a Jew is commanded to have a mezuzah on the front door of his house, on the doors of our house, on the gates, right? And what that means is, like the front door and all the other doorways inside the house, doorways and archways, unless it's to a bathroom or a closet. But every other door in the house should have a mezuzah. And, many times when people are having health challenges, a tzaddik, somebody like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and there are other Rebbes who taught the same, if you're having trouble in your life and you're a Jew, whether with health or livelihood or other things, check your mezuzahs, because the mezuzah is a kind of 24/7 protection on your home that says, a Jew who trusts in God lives in this home. But sometimes the scroll inside the mezuzah gets old, gets warped. God forbid insects get in there and eat part of it. And then if any of the letters become malformed in some way, it's no longer kosher. It doesn't provide the protection. And you should check it, and you're supposed to check it twice in 7 years. And then maybe replacing the one that's deficient will help, sort of like unstop the blessing that could be flowing into your life. Seraphim Winslow, are both kinds of rain in this passage considered subsets of Geshem, or is Geshem something else? Yes, they're considered subsets of Geshem, right? So Geshem is the rain generally, and then Yoreh and Malkush refer to the early rain and the late rain. Lucy, I found it fascinating that depending upon the chosen etymology, Yoreh can be instructive, gentle, and a blessing, or it can be forceful and destructive and a curse. So the same word carries in itself an ambiguity. We need to discern whether it is a blessing or a curse. And I think that same ambiguity exists in the events that happen to us in our lives. The same event could be for a blessing or a curse, and one needs to look deeper to know. Amen, Lucy. It's a beautiful, beautiful thought. And so often, it's not just looking deeper. It's that time will reveal that what seemed like a curse was actually a blessing. So often a door slams in our face and our high hopes are dashed. And then later we learn, if we had made that flight, it would not have been so good for us. If we had gotten that job, it wouldn't have actually been so good for us. It wouldn't have been nearly as good as what happened, down the road, because that plan A didn't work out and plan B turned out to be not only what we needed, but what God designed specifically for us, and a major blessing, right? So sometimes looking deeper, we won't see it. That's the moment to trust that this thing that looks terrible, there's a reason for it. I trust God. He's got my back. Somehow this is going to work out for the best. And just having that faith in that moment, it's something we need to train ourselves to do, but it will usually pay off. Sharon, so it is with the rain. I think that's the point of this teaching. A similar lesson is given about gold. In the same parsha, Kitisa, gold is used for evil, the golden calf, and for gold, the Mishkan as well, right? Gold is used for the gold calf. And gold is used. It's the precious metal that is involved in some of the on the altar, and particularly on the Aron, right? So the ark that holds the tablets of the Ten Commandments is covered in gold. So what will we do with a blessing that comes to us? Will we use it or abuse it? The beauty of this world and the beauty of God hiding from us is that He leaves us free to make that choice. Renee, Gleaners is the name of a food bank here in central Indiana. Thank you for sharing. Tom, I could be a smart aleck. Who, me? Says Tom. And ask how many Jews had to turn to Avodah Zarah for God to get angry and close up the heavens, but that would be rude, so I won't ask. Wink, wink. Yeah, I don't know. It's a great question. Was it that the majority turned to idolatry and that was what really angered God? Or Was it enough that a substantial number of people did and other people just turned a blind eye to it? Was there no one to rebuke them as they were going astray? I don't know. I mean, the Torah does say that if a whole town goes to idolatry, how you're supposed to handle that situation. Kind of like the army of the nation should go in and destroy that town and rid the nation of that stain of idolatry going on in that town. And there's other measures like that. So, it would seem like, well, a group of people could go bad and the nation won't be punished for it as long as the nation does its job. But I don't know what the formulas are for how bad the nation has to go. And finally, Bill, so the sages are debating the accuracy of red skies by night, sailors delight, red skies by morning, sailors take warning. Right, you're telling me that these are this kind of like, sort of wisdom passed down from, older mariners to younger mariners. And what the signs of the sky are telling us. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but these kinds of rules generally prove true. And again, yes, exactly. I mean, so much of what the sages learn, we'll get to passages about astronomy where it's incredibly detailed, and they had no telescopes, right? And no computers that could sort of make charts about what, how the stars are moving over time. And it was just really understanding the lines in the sky and then projecting in one's inner eye what that looks like. Maybe they could make drawings on clay tablets. Maybe they had paper and charcoal, but it was, it was amazing the acuity of their observations and how much they were able to derive about the motion of the stars, the seasons, just so much natural phenomena. And why do they do that? In some cases, okay, for practical reasons. How should farmers behave? How should brewers behave? How should, having knowledge of nature helps you in business. But for them, for the sages, really, it's because this world was designed by God. And every time we seek to understand how the world works, we're getting some insight into God's will. And that is why there's no contradiction between faith and science, right? Any apparent contradiction means we're misunderstanding one or the other or both. Because this world created by God, right, is for our enjoyment, and it sets the stage for us to do God's will if we so choose. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll be together again on Sunday. No class tomorrow, no class Saturday night because of our Minyan's Shabbaton. So with God's help, we'll be together again on Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific for a triple daf. If anything happens during our travel, to prevent that, then I'll post on the Facebook page and the Facebook group, Accidental Talmudist and Accidental Talmudist Forum, that there's a delay and we'll go with class on Monday. But God willing, we'll resume again Sunday night. All the best and good Shabbos.